my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I'm wearing one of my fancy Booktube hats, and today I am doing the mid-year book Freakout tag for 2024. It's the same tag every year, but there are lots of different variants of it because it's been around for so long and people have tweaked it. I'm doing the exact same version I've done on this channel before. I don't do it every year. I think I've only done it twice before. I did it for the first time in 2017 and again in 2022. There has been also a version of this tag going around Book Talk this year, which is fascinating. I did that version on Book Talk, but it is a slightly shorter list of questions than this one. I'm going to be giving mostly the same answers though. Now the first question is the best book you've read so far in 2024. I had a string of really excellent reads in the first few months of the year. So I have a number of 5-star favorites to choose from, but the question isn't your personal favorite book of the year so far, it's the best. So of those 5-star favorites, the one that I've picked that isn't necessarily my personal favorite, but it's the one that I would recommend to the most people, is A Warning About Swans by Romero. I've talked about this book before a bit. I still have a full review of it on Goodreads that I haven't filmed in video format yet. But this is a YA historical fairy tale fantasy novel in verse that was released last year and didn't get a lot of attention. I feel that it is my personal mission now to bring attention to this book. This is absolutely beautiful, dreamy fairy tale writing. It has a very classic feminist fantasy feel. I had such a great time with this book. And then the best sequel I've read so far in 2024. Also, again, not my favorite. I feel like I have to explain here. Probably my personal favorite book I've read so far this year is Demigod 12 by Gail Carriger. I am under no misguided impression that this is objectively the best anything I've read so far this year. There are other things I've read this year that I feel I have to acknowledge are better, but that is why the sort of caveat explanation in front of both best book and best sequel. The real best sequel I read so far this year, I think, is Seasparrow by Kristin Cashore, which is the 5th book in the Graceling Realm series. This is also YA. It follows Hava, who is a supporting character in both Bitter Blue and Winterkeep. And this is a really intense character study as opposed to being a really plot-driven novel. It is, I think, the only book in this series that's told in first person, so it feels different to read than the previous books, but this is a type of storytelling that I really, really enjoy. I would love to keep getting books in this world if they keep being as good as this one and Winterkeep. A new release you haven't read yet but want to. There's going to be another one of these showing up later in this tag. But for this question, I'm going to go with Sheine Lende by Darcie Little Badger. This is one of the books that I'm going to be most excited to seek out and pick up after my Hugo Award panic reading season is over. This is the prequel to Elatsoe. Also YA. The beginning of this tag has been very YA heavy. That's not on purpose, it's just happened that way. Question number 4, my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. My last video that I posted on this channel was a full list of all of my anticipated releases of the second half of the year if you want to check that out. But personally, my most anticipated is Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan. This is her first adult fantasy novel. She has previously published YA, and I cannot wait. Question number 5 is your biggest disappointment of the year so far. Note that, again, this is not the worst book you've read so far. Biggest disappointment implies more that it's something that you had very high expectations for and that it fell short. And for me, that is unfortunately A Fire Born of Exile by Aliette de Bodard. I feel like I might be in the minority with this one though, because this one has a much higher average Goodreads rating than The Red Scholar's Wake, but I liked The Red Scholar's Author's Wake a lot more. I think this book was trying to do two different things, which was on one hand this sort of grand revenge plot, and on the other hand this, you know, romance love story. And I don't think it balanced those two halves well. I don't think either half ended up being exceedingly compelling. I still gave this 3 stars though. There are 3 point of view characters in this, and I really liked one of them. I liked the one character who was neither doing romance nor revenge. If you want to know what the worst book I've read so far this year was, it was this one, Subversive by Colleen Cowley. But this is something that I went in with no particular expectations. Like, I knew I was reading something that I'd gotten on a Kindle deal on a whim because I was looking for indie fantasy of manners, and that's always going to be hit or miss. This one was a big miss because of the romance plot was very for me. Also, the world building had me scratching my head a bit. Question number 6 is biggest surprise, and that one has to be a repeat. It's A Warning About Swans again. And that's because this was also a book I went into with really no expectations. This was a total impulse purchase for me because it was 50% off on the Barnes & Noble website when I was placing an order for other things. I had heard nothing about this book whatsoever. It just looked like my vibes. And then question number 7, favorite new author debut or new to you? New to me, obviously, R.M. Romero. I haven't read anything else she's written yet. Some of her books look more interesting to me than others, but you bet I will be picking up more of her work. Next is the question that everyone seems to struggle with every year, myself included, which is newest fictional crush. This is kind of tough for me in particular this year because a bunch of my favorite books I've read in the first half of 2024 have had very young characters. You'll recall the YA books I was mentioning earlier, but also some adult books with very young characters as well. And while a lot of those are my favorite characters of the year, they're like my book children, not my book crushes for obvious reasons. When I did this for TikTok and it was just like, hold up a book for 2 seconds, you don't have to justify yourself, I treated it as a kind of runner-up slot for favorite character, which is the question after this. I've read this year the first 2 books in this series, the Green Wing and Dart series by Victoria Goddard, and this is collectively one of my favorite casts of characters I've read about this year. And these characters are all adults. They've just graduated from university, but like, I'm a good deal older than that. That's still fairly young for me. And so I think my answer is still Gemmis Greenwing, who's the protagonist of these books, but I still feel like this is more of just an honorable mention for favorite character. And then question number 9, newest favorite character, has to be Fex from the Tinkered Starsong trilogy by Gail Carriger, but this is also like a whole friend group thing. These are my aforementioned book children. They must be protected at all costs. Fex would agree with that statement. He also would protect his friends at all costs, and that's why we love him. I've done a series review of these books. It is part of like an hour-long video that is 3 separate series reviews, but they are all time-stamped so you can jump to whichever one you're interested in. Question number 10, book that made you cry. I'm not particularly proud of this because I did, if you watch that series review, have some like serious critiques of this book, but Dome 6, 3rd book in the Tinkered Starsong trilogy. This has a very rude character death in it that is no less rude for the fact that you've been told it might be coming since book 1. I'm still upset. I'm not over it. A book that made you happy, and we're going back to Green Wing and Dart here because I was laughing all the way through Bee Sting Cake. Your mileage may vary, but I thought this book was charming and hilarious. Questions 12 and 13 are the ones that aren't in all versions of this tag. 12 is favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year, and this is rude because it reminds me that I have not been watching things. I think the only thing that I can count as a book to film adaptation that I've seen this year at all is the most recent season of Hilda on Netflix, which I took too long to get around to watching and then haven't actually finished. I've still got a couple episodes left. And I don't even know if this counts as a book to film adaptation anymore, because they got to the end of the graphic novel series with the movie, and then this season is all original material. Hilda, the animated series on Netflix, and the middle grade graphic novel series by Luke Pearson that it's based on are always good recommendations though, so it deserves the shout out. And then question 13, favorite review you've written this year or favorite video you've made this year. I haven't made a lot of videos this year. I had a sort of unexpected hiatus for several months, but I am genuinely really proud of all of the videos that I've posted so far on this channel this year. There was that hour-long 3-series review video, which was how I came back from my hiatus with literally the longest video I have ever made, by like a lot. But I think my favorite so far is the one that came after that, where I did an If You Like This, Try That video for SFF books. I want to be making a concerted effort to regularly post videos on my channel that will work as an introduction to my channel for people who've never watched me before, or that people looking for a certain video topic or a certain type of recommendation can continue to come to and feel like that video is still relevant for like years in the future. Things that are like my June wrap-up on YouTube, those videos are a lot of work to make. You'll have noticed that I don't love making them. And also I feel like there's so little reward, because the people who are clicking on that sort of video that's like my June wrap-up are going to be people who are already watching all of your videos. And the perceived relevance of that type of content seems to expire pretty fast after it's posted. Even if the discussions of individual books in those videos would hold up over time, people don't tend to find that content when it's buried in that sort of video. And I'm not going to stop making wrap-ups. Part of this is just me justifying to myself the fact that I'm having a really hard time keeping up with wrap-ups. But I've always enjoyed making recommendation videos the most. And with the lack of things that have sort of disappeared in the community, like monthly recommendations or the Booktube SFF babbles that we used to have years ago, I've had to work to come up with some of my own topics. And so, If You Like This, Try That video is a pretty common video format that I had just never done before. It was a little challenging for me to come up with those book pairings. I ended up being pretty proud of it, and it's a format that I could repeat with different books in the future. Question 14 is the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year, and I think for me that is Rake's Fall by Vajra Chandrasekhara. Holding that up so you can see how pretty it is, and it's not fancy under the dust jacket, but it is purple, and I kind of have a thing for purple books. This is my other new release that I haven't gotten to yet but want to. This was a pre-order, and I am making a rule for myself these days that pre-orders have to be things that I'm willing to drop everything and read the moment they arrive. But this has been here for weeks and I haven't read it yet. I am making an exception to my rule because we are in the final stretches of the Hugo reading. The Hugo reading is all-consuming. It's a yearly cycle. It's never ending. And then the final question is, which books do you need to read by the end of the year? Of course, this one that I just held up. And then I'm gonna list a couple more than I did in the TikTok. The other one I showed in the TikTok is Within the Sanctuary of Wings by Marie Brennan, which is the final book in the main Lady Trent series. I read the second to last book last year, and if I don't finally finish this series this year, like, what am I even doing with myself? I always enjoy these books when I'm reading them. I just have such a hard time finishing series that are like out and it's been a while and they're completed and they're done, and I just need to make myself read them. But then there are a couple more I want to add in here. I really want to read either one but possibly both of the books in this bind-up by Martha Wells. This is the Book of Illyrienne, the new bind-up that contains her debut novel, The Element of Fire, and also The Death of the Necromancer. I bought this with the intent of like reading it immediately, but then Hugo reading has been happening. And then also The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I have been told by so many people that I will love this. I am sure they are right. From all the reviews I've seen, this seems so much something I will love, and I am late to the party. Anyhow, that's all. That's my mid-year book freakout tag. If you have thoughts or feelings on any of these books, feel free to share them down below. Anyhow, I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.